All right, welcome everyone. This is Lab 7. Once again, we're going to start at Hunt Hall, just like we were on a in-person field trip. And today we're actually going to stay in Davis, and we're going to go visit the West Davis Pond. The West Davis Pond is a detention basin in West Davis. And it's important that you know the history of this site. It was constructed back in the early 90s just to serve as a flood detention basin for parts of West Davis. This is the boundary of the site itself, and I'd like to show you what it looked like before the vegetation grew to the height that it was. So first, let's go back to 1993. The image quality here isn't great, but you can tell that the vegetation isn't nearly as tall as it is now. So let's fast forward to imagery from last year. Notice the thick vegetation, especially here in the northern end, but also along the channels here in the south end. Let's go back to 1993. A little bit of vegetation up here, but this area is almost devoid. I also want to show you what the West Davis Pond looks like when there's a lot of water in it. So this is imagery from the end of June in 2007. Apparently they had a wet winter because it was flooded. So I'll toggle back in a second, but notice how most of the southern end of West Davis Pond and a lot of the mudflats here in the north part of the pond were covered. But notice how this large island here remains above the water surface. So now let's go to the present. And you can see that the only areas that have water in them are the potholes, the channels. We'll get rid of historical imagery here. Zoom in and give you an idea of the 3D feeling of West Davis Ponds, so you get an idea of what it's like if you were there. Here is a berm that I'm going to bring up in one of the following videos. And you can also get an idea that this is the topography of one of the potholes. Here's another berm that's a little bit more of a vegetated island. And then up here is the main island for West Davis Ponds, and you can see that the water level is around this area. So all of the bright green vegetation in the herbaceous layer is what comes up after the water recedes during the spring. But the vegetation up here is woody shrubs and trees. And here in the northern end is a little bit denser riparian forest with some smaller islands, and this area is pretty dense riparian forest. So I'd like to show you the history of the water courses in West Davis. So we'll take a pretty zoomed out approach here. The old water course was something like this. I have to approximate because there isn't imagery here available, and I don't want to go back into the archives of imagery. But this is roughly the water course that was not connected to Poudre Creek that would drain this starting up here in this end of the watershed, and this actually flowed all the way out. And some of this is still visible. You can see this is the actual original old water course. It went somehow through West and North Davis, and it went roughly through here. And so some of that is actually visible in the North Davis Wild Horse Golf Course, a little bit again here, and it made its way up there to the slough. So let's compare this to the new water course. This was constructed as a drainage ditch relying partly on the old water course. So it takes water here from West Davis Pond. It takes water from Stonegate Basin, and it goes into this North Davis Canal, which you can see a little bit more clearly zoomed in. This little part here is a canal. Here's some vegetation, and you can walk along this road along Covell Boulevard. So that water, by gravity, makes its way from Lake Boulevard area here by the hospital, up through the North Davis Greenbelt, above the cannery, between the cannery area and another part of North Davis, through the Wild Horse Golf Course. So again, we're looking at the yellow, and then it follows ag drainage ditches into a drainage slough up here near the Yolo County landfill, which is right here. And that slough eventually makes its way over to the Yolo bypass, which is effectively the flooding version of the Sacramento River. And then, as we know, the Sacramento River, which is delineated by this county line here, eventually makes its way down into the Delta, San Francisco Bay, and eventually the Pacific Ocean. So it's important that you figure out here a little bit what the flow of the current water is. You're going to have to mark this on your map and figure out the shape of Davis. The West Davis Pond is this here. Make sure not to confuse it with the Stonegate Lake, which is down here. So we're looking at the West Davis Pond, which is more of a constructed wetland than just the Stonegate Lake. It goes from there along Covell Boulevard, roughly parallels Highway 113, and kind of follows the contour of North Davis all the way up to this drainage slough and then out into the Yolo bypass. So let's take those out and go back into the West Davis Pond. The water comes into the West Davis Pond via some drainage ditches, and in one of the following videos I'm going to show you one of those drain pipes, and I'll show you the location of that drain pipe so you get an idea. It comes in this corner. These are pretty large drain pipes on here, the south corners. They're about 30 inches wide, and then there are some smaller drain pipes along this edge that bring water in. Another thing to keep in mind is the groundwater pump up here at the north end, and you can actually see some of the groundwater pump structure right here. So that groundwater pump maintains the water level in West Davis Pond in the summer such that these potholes and channels always stay at a level that would provide habitat for waterfowl and would allow the fish in those ponds to live year-round. Because there are some years that we don't get enough water for the water to stay in there year-round. It would all precipitate out. So another part of the lab that's important to conceptualize is this is the West Davis Pond, which is a constructed wetland, a detention basin, and the Stonegate Basin is simply a detention basin. There was no wetland constructed for that. And the Stonegate Basin is going to be the site for you to do your Lab 8. The Stonegate Basin is about a third the size of the West Davis Pond, so keep that in mind. You aren't necessarily going to have the luxury of being able to create an enormous island like West Davis Pond has. Your islands will be smaller. Consider that. Consider the size of the potholes. West Davis Pond, as we can see here, I can see 3 very large potholes. Here's 1, 2, 3, and then it has channels that go and encircle all of these islands. All right? Keep that in mind over here at the Stonegate Basin. Another thing I'll show you in the videos is this this drinking water pumping station here. You're going to have to contend with that. And also in Lab 8, you are going to have to link these 2 sites. Okay, so you're going to somehow have to link the Stonegate Basin and the West Davis Ponds via a large culvert that wildlife can get through with a walking path, or a bridge that goes over a completely connected waterway. So you're going to have to reduce the elevation of much of Stonegate Basin to match that of the West Pond site. That's only if you end up doing Lab 8. So I'm going to zoom in here and give you a little bit of a 3D perspective for Stonegate Basin, okay? So compared to the West Davis Ponds, which is right over here, you can see that dense riparian forest, Stonegate Basin doesn't have anything. It's invasive annual grassland. Here's non-native stone pine. There are some elderberries, and I show you those in the videos as well. So this gives you an idea of kind of the scale of your site, okay? It's about how big it is. It's not enormous, but I think it's a really cool project for a landscape architecture student to have the opportunity to do. So I'll just return now to the main image so that you can get an idea again of what this site looks like from above. Here's the site plan itself for West Ponds. You'll review this a little bit more in depth with your TA, but just to give you an idea, this looks pretty similar to that Google Earth image that we looked at a few moments ago. It's the same shape. North is north here, just like it was in the Google Earth image. And the hash area that you see is the wetland itself, or sorry, is the water itself. The white area is mudflats, which is the main focus of this wetland because the waterfowl need large areas of mudflat for feeding. Another feature are these islands. So there's not a lot of coverage of the island as land cover in this system in particular. So this says low island, existing island, and this is large island. And this would be that place that animals could retreat during areas of flooding, so they have somewhere dry to go and shelter when the wetland is flooded. Think like very major rain events. And then there are a couple medium-sized islands down here. Those are the couple of the main features. Another one is the recreation trail along the eastern side and the southern side right here, and that's the trail that I walk along in the following videos, so keep that in mind. Lake Boulevard is right here, and Stonegate Basin is on the other side of Lake Boulevard, over on this side. So let's go to the cross-section itself. If we were to draw a cross-section, I'll go ahead and actually draw it here for you on this image. So the cross-section goes from an upper bikeway over to these potholes. It goes through a connecting channel and then over to the potholes. So let's find an area that goes through a channel and then makes its way to a pothole. And I actually have found an area just like that. So if we were to draw a cross-section from here through a pothole, just like that. So it goes from above the upper bikeway down into one of the permanent water channels, up over a small mud flat, into a pothole again, and just slightly up the other side. We'll go to the cross-section itself, the upper bikeway. This lower bikeway was never constructed, so it goes from the upper bikeway all the way down to this permanent water channel, over a mud flat, and into the pothole itself. So this gives you an idea of the elevation. All of these elevations are given in feet above mean sea level, and the water level that we saw at the site in the videos, just for your reference, was about 40 feet. So this says 40.5 feet for the spring water level, but it's a little bit lower this year. The mud flats are all exposed, so we're looking at something that's almost the summer water level, just about 40 feet in between these two values. An average winter, the water level will get up to 42 feet above sea level, which will flood the barrier islands. The 2-year flood event will go up to 43 feet. A 10-year event will almost get to the top of the highest island, which is 47 feet, and this shows you the height of that largest island. So we'll just almost get to the top of that. And then the 100-year event, which is very major, gets to actually 50 feet above mean sea level. And I go over a little bit of this in the videos, but just so you get an idea, the scale is here on the left, and then the cross-section goes just like that.